Okay, cool. So is everyone familiar with the CSA model or community supported agriculture model? If not, I thought maybe we could just spend a minute or two talking about it. The basic gist of it is, let's share my screen here real quick. The basic gist of it is it's a direct sale tool or model for selling your produce directly to potential customers. And it's the primary market that Big River Farms offers to you all as farmers in our education program with access to land at the farm. So I thought we'd talk about a little bit what ours looks like. It is an aggregated program. So what I mean by that is that as opposed to like one farmer or one farm team with a bunch of staff growing all of the produce for potential customers, ours is unique in that it sources food from a whole bunch of different farmers, from you all, from farmers who are in our education program. And it's a good way to kind of get your feet wet, learn about the model, participate in it as a first-year farmer, as a potential market for selling your produce, and lessen some of that risk of starting up, your own independent CSA as you're learning the ropes, and coming to these classes and, getting your hands dirty in the fields in your first year at Big River Farms. So a way to kind of reduce some of those barriers to access and provide an opportunity right up front. So we as farm staff manage kind of the back end logistics of the CSA program. So doing things like member recruitment, sales, communications throughout the season, those kinds of things. I'm going to pause for 1 second. I see we have Mario and Andres who just joined us to connect them for interpretation services.
Thank you.
Okay, Andres, I just made you the interpreter.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And Mario, you should be able to choose Spanish from that interpretation button on the bottom now too. Okay, so we were just talking about CSA model, what that looks like, and how it operates at Big River Farms. So I'm going to share my screen again here. So like I was saying, it's a direct sale model, and it's a great way to sell directly without having that kind of middle person buyer, somebody that you're selling food to at wholesale cost or in bulk quantities, who then redistributes it or resells it. It's a great way to sell directly to potential customers, and this is kind of how it looks. So community supported agriculture models typically revolve around a subscription model where customers can sign up and will pay either upfront for a share, which is basically a box of food that you're producing on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis throughout the season. And historically, that's looked like people paying all up front, and then that ensures that you have that financial capital, the money up front from potential customers, and can use it as you're planning out, the season or your business priorities. Have that money to buy tools, to buy seeds, equipment that you need for the season. So it's creating that relationship, that direct relationship with customers, establishing it up front, and getting that buy-in and that trust from the customers or from the CSA members. So there's a bit of a, I've heard it framed as a shared risk, shared reward model, because there's a certain amount of risk and trust that both you as the farmer and that CSA customers or members are putting into the program or putting into the model, because of all the uncertainties that come with farming, which are being heightened now because of the increased impacts of climate change and the pandemic and various other factors. So there's that risk on your side as a farmer just in general, and then there's the potential risk of customers opting in and paying upfront for a subscription to access your produce because of those potential uncertainties that might impact crop growth or when things are ready throughout the season. So to try and lay that out front in communications with members right away, just so there's some clarity around that and people know what they're buying into. So I said historically the model has been members pay upfront for the whole season. So that might be like, depending on what your CSA box subscription model looks like, it could be anywhere from $300 to $600 or $700 for the whole season. Big River Farms CSA model is an 18-week season from mid-June through mid-October. And we use a weekly model. So we deliver once a week for that whole 18 weeks from June through October. And we offer two size shares or two different box sizes of produce to CSA members who sign up. And we also offer a couple payment plans to make it a little bit more accessible to folks. So we do offer the full payment upfront plan where customers can pay it all at once, whatever the cost is, like $500 to $700 upfront for the whole season. They can choose either a full size or a half size share, so different size boxes with different amounts of produce in them each week. And then the costs are a little different for both of those. Or members can sign up paying 25% of the cost up front, 25% of the cost on the first day of deliveries in June, and then the other total 50% cost is split up throughout the whole 18-week season. So just as a way to try and reduce that financial barrier to folks. We also, as Big River Farms and the food group, partner with an organization based out of Madison, Wisconsin. That's another nonprofit focused on supporting CSA farmers called Fair Share CSA Coalition. And they have some subsidized grant-funded programs to try and reduce some of those financial barriers to access to CSA memberships too. So just as a heads up that's something that we participate in, offer to potential customers. And it's specifically targeted towards supporting folks on government assistance programs using things like EBT and WIC and SNAP benefits. Again, to try and reduce that financial barrier to access of paying all that money up front to be a customer, a CSA member. So just a heads up, wanted to share that with you. But yeah, so our model, like I said, is 18 weeks. We deliver once a week throughout that season. This graphic, you can see customers buy a share or a box from us as Big River Farms. You can choose as a farmer in our program to opt in and participate in this program as a potential market of yours. I will say this is the first year that we're opening up the program to all farmers at Big River Farms to try and make it more inclusive and to try and provide that more accessible. And the idea that we've talked about is working with you as a first-year farmer if you're interested in participating to really focus on 1 to 2 main produce crops that you could grow on contract for our CSA throughout the season. So working with me directly as the market specialist to talk about what those crops might be and what that would look like as far as contracts go. And then working with some of our other staff who are more operations focused and who have more of that farming education background to do more training and hands-on education, as the growing season gets going in the field, and helping with any questions you have about crop planning or growing those crops for contract and what that might look like. We do all the deliveries. So we have 14 different pickup spots that we deliver to throughout the cities and around the farm by Stillwater and Marina and St. Croix. So this visual is just a map of where all those pickup spots are. So we'll have probably a person on contract this season who will make all our deliveries. So you don't have to worry about that aspect of it. That's another resource that we provide to you as farmers in the program. I'm gonna go back to types. So like I said, we have a few different types of CSA shares that we offer. We do the full size and the half share, which are the only difference is that price up front, and then the number of vegetables or produce items in each size share. So the full one, I think on average would have 10 to 14 different types of veggies in it. And then the half size typically has, I think 8 to 10 different produce items in it on a weekly basis. We also partner with 2 outside organic farm partners who have fruit shares. So, we're really focused on vegetables for the most part at Big River Farms. And then we work with these outside fruit farmers to offer 2 other organic share options. So when members sign up for vegetable shares from us, they can also choose to add on these 2 different fruit share types. And they're both organic because we're certified organic farms, so we want to make sure that those fruit shares are also organic to stay in line with our values. And there's 2 types, again, to just provide more options for members signing up. So they're different sizes and different price points too, like our half and our full vegetable shares. Mary Dirtyface is nearby in Menominee, Wisconsin, not too far from our farm. And they are a family that grows all their fruit on site. In the past, they've done a full season share. This coming season, they're changing things up and just offering a fall fruit share. So I think it's over like September through October for deliveries over a few weeks, kind of straddling those months. That'll be more focused on apples, and there might be some berries still involved, but a little bit smaller, different price point, focus on the fall season. And then the Everett Myers one is run by a farmer in Stillwater. He grows some stuff in Stillwater, and then he also sources organic fruit from some partners on the West Coast in California, Oregon, and Washington State. So just some context for how our program works. Here's a couple fruit share photos. Yeah, I think that's it for, I'll stop sharing that, just for how the model works. So yeah, like I said, in the past, it's only been open to farmers who have gone through at least a year of the program, but we're opening it up to everyone this year. And I wanted to go through kind of the process for how we source produce from you all as farmers and what that looks like. And then also talk about this new community supported agriculture participation agreement, which is also brand new to the program this season. It's kind of an offshoot of the education agreement that you all signed and that we talked about at the kickoff session a few weeks back. So in the past, we didn't have anything that really laid out the expectations and the requirements for participating as a farmer in the program. So that's kind of the background for why the CSA program agreement exists now. So I thought we could talk about that a little bit. And then last but not least, loosely, we have this kind of produce guide that walks through the steps for identifying produce for different programs that we run at the farm, and what that looks like. So I thought we could talk through that too. So I'm going to start with the sourcing process document. If at any time you have questions, feel free to stop me or put them in the chat. We'll also save some time at the very end for some questions. And If you hear my dog, apologies, you might bark in the background, but just let me know if you need me to repeat anything. Okay, so these documents were all in the emails I sent out and the calendar invite, but if you need them again, just let me know. I can email them to you. So the sourcing process, I wanted to talk through this just to kind of give you some insight and like a heads up on what all goes into sourcing food from you specifically for our aggregated CSA program at the farm. I think the biggest thing to note is up top there in italics is that we kind of do things about a week in advance to try and help us plan out like what those boxes of produce will look like that we're delivering to our CSA members, our customers who sign up, and to also work with you to get a better sense of how to do harvest estimates and field walks and some of the prep work that goes into identifying the produce you're growing and when it might be ready for market. So yeah, just something to note that this process happens about a week in advance of when we actually harvest and pack and deliver the produce for each weekly CSA shared delivery. So the first one on there is every Tuesday morning, myself and May, who you might have met, who's our farm operations specialist. The two of us will do a weekly field walk of all 50 acres at Big River Farms. And if you're there, we'll come out and chat with you and kind of look at what you're growing specifically for CSA and identify any available produce that might be ready to harvest for the following Tuesday. So again, a week in advance. And trying to figure out what might be available, what you might have available for sale to us for the CSA program. Wednesday mornings, so the next day after we do that field walk, Jeff, who's on the call, who you've all probably met at this point, who's our program coordinator, he'll call you all just to confirm what we saw out in the field and what we might have talked about in the field. And that's partially a accountability measure to make sure that we're not putting in an order for produce that you might be selling to another market you have. So we just want to have that kind of verbal confirmation to make sure that we're not ordering something that's not available or not telling our customers to expect produce that might not be available if it's being sold somewhere else. So that kind of happens Wednesday mornings. And then, let's see, what's the next step? Just hearing back from you to get that verbal confirmation. We do have harvest estimate forms. So if you're interested in using those, that's an option too. We can provide you that template and just use that as a tool to fill out and tell us what you might have available for the following week for CSA. So we'll talk about that more at an upcoming meeting too, or an upcoming class, but just wanted to throw that out there, but that's an option as well. And then once all those steps are done, we kind of have a master like spreadsheet that lists out your name, the produce you have available for CSA the following week. And then I'll put that all into this software program we use that manages our inventory specifically for the CSA program. And I always give preference to our contracts. So like I said, I'm in the process right now of creating CSA contracts with all of our returning farmers who have been in the program for at least a couple of years and who have opted into participating. And again, as first-year farmers, you'll be able to participate this year if you'd like. And we'll create contracts for you as well for those 1 to 2 crops that you're interested in growing. So that looks like a big master spreadsheet too that lays out like the full 18-week season. And then for each week, it'll have like 12 to 14 different crops with all of the farmers who are growing those crops and who have the contract for that week. So when May and I do that field walk each Tuesday, Dee and I both have a clipboard with those contracts printed out. So as we're coming around and talking to you, we really prioritize what are on those contracts to make sure that, you know, that's another kind of accountability measure, right? Like we want to make sure that we're purchasing and buying food from you all if it's been written up in those contracts. I will say on any given week throughout the season, just because of the variability of farming and weather, pests, all those variabilities, that maybe 50% at most of what's on contract is actually ready to harvest the following week for CSA. So there's a lot of flexibility there too. So part of this process is we'll identify any crops that you have on contract, and then like anything else you might not have a market for that you'd be willing to sell to us for the CSA program. And we'll have those kind of conversations on a weekly basis too. So you know that there's more flexibility and opportunities for selling produce that isn't on contract too. So just a heads up on that. After all those kind of verbal confirmations are done and we've done our field walk, we've gathered all that information, we've talked to you about it, and I've put it all into the software program that manages that inventory. I'll send out that information to our CSA members just to give them the heads up, and then I'll create purchase orders for you on Thursdays. And that's basically a piece of paper that lists your contact info and the crops that we've talked about that we as the farm want to purchase from you to use in our CSA boxes for the following week. So those that gets created on Thursday, and I'll give you paper copies of that in a mailbox at the farm office, kind of right in the entryway there. And then I can also email digital copies of those to you. So you just have them in a couple formats, whatever you prefer, whatever's easiest on your end for keeping track of things. So that'll happen on Thursdays. And then the hope is that part of the reason we do this a week in advance is because if you have other markets, specifically like farmers markets that tend to happen on the weekends, it's nice to have that like heads up in advance, so so you can kind of plan out like which crops are going to which market that you're prioritizing for your farm business. So you try and always get those CSA purchase orders for the following week finalized by Thursday or Friday the week before, just to give you that heads up as you're harvesting and prepping for other markets that you might have. So after all that is done, the following week rolls around, and this is really up to you, like when you want to harvest and turn in that produce. I think ideally a lot of farmers in the past have done it like a day or maybe 2 days before, depending on what type of crops it is, to make sure that it's still fresh, especially for things like leafy greens and herbs that might spoil more quickly. But typically, you all as farmers would harvest CSA produce on those purchase orders the following Monday or Tuesday, depending on what your schedules look like. And our weekly process for packing and delivering our CSA shares all happens on Wednesday morning from 6 to 8:30 in the morning. So we'll have a host of CSA volunteers who will come every week, and a handful of us as staff who will be packing those vegetable shares. Our goal this year is 200 vegetable shares, try to get 200 members. The past couple of years, we've gotten around 230 members both seasons, and we saw a big increase in members and customers who signed up during the pandemic who wanted to support local farmers and know exactly where their food was coming from. So we're pretty hopeful that we'll hit that 200 number again. And new this season, we're trying to shift the way that we manage the program a little bit to create more educational opportunities and kind of close a bit of a disconnect that existed in the past, where we as staff were managing all the logistics and program management aspects on the back end, and weren't teaching farmers in the program how that all happens. So that's a bit of a shift in how we're trying to operate the program, the CSA program this year at the farm. Is to really encourage you to participate more in those aspects and to create those opportunities so that there's more knowledge sharing going back and forth, and being able, from our perspective as staff, being able to provide those educational opportunities to ultimately empower you to have that knowledge to start your own independent CSA, if that's something that you want to do, or if that fits into your business plan as a farmer. And as long as you're in the program as a farmer at Big River Farms, we'll definitely still be able to provide hands-on support and education if that's the route you decide to go, if you want to start your own CSA. So just some insight into some transitions this year and what that's looking like.
Matt, can I add something really quickly?
Yeah, for sure.
I was just wanting to add that there are a bunch of other farm teams, which I think you mentioned, that are doing their own CSAs, like individual CSAs. And I feel like there's a bunch of different ways now, and it's growing more and more. There's different platforms and different ways to do a CSA. So if you're interested, I just would really encourage you to talk to other farm teams about their CSA and how that looks as well. Because there's a bunch of different ways to do it.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That's a good plug for our upcoming panel discussion too. So we're hosting, you might have seen a calendar invite I sent out this morning. We're hosting a CSA panel discussion on February 19th from 9 to 11 a.m. That's a Saturday in a few weeks. And like Jeff mentioned, we had a few farmers last year in the program who had their own independent CSA programs, and also had contracts with us for our kind of cooperative aggregated CSA program. But the idea is that at that panel discussion, they'll all be presenting information on how they started their own CSA, what that looks like, some successes and challenges they face, ideas for like member recruitment, customer recruitment and retention, and what that looks like. But yeah, check that out if you're available and you're interested in the CSA and thinking about starting your own in the future. Like Jeff said, they have all kind of approached it through different lenses and different approaches, different efforts. So I think it'll be a cool opportunity to learn from all of them directly from other farmers who have done it themselves. But otherwise, informally too, like Jeff said, feel free to just like reach out and talk with other farmers at Big River Farms once the growing season gets going, or reaching out now over email or phone if you want to chat about anything. Okay, number 7, I was talking about packing in the morning. So that happens every Wednesday morning. And like I said, we hire a delivery driver to go to all 14 of those drop sites throughout the cities and make those produce deliveries. New this season, as part of that transition I was talking about, we are, let me switch documents here. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, did that switch over for you? Can you see the CSA participation agreement? New this year is, as part of that, kind of bridge that knowledge gap that I talked about before, and like provide more educational opportunities on the back end for how the program is operated and managed. We're asking you as farmers, if you choose to participate in this market opportunity and have contracts, to also participate in kind of the management of some shared resources. So, you know, we have the pack shed and like the cooler space that are all shared resources that you as farmers can access at the farm. And for the CSA program specifically, we have plastic reusable boxes that we use for deliveries each week, and they have to be cleaned and sanitized between each use on a weekly basis. So part of this program agreement is participating in some of that that management of resources, that cleaning of the CSA totes on a weekly basis, and we'll have a schedule for that all planned out before the season starts. The other 2 things in here that I wanted to highlight as part of this training and education section of the CSA agreement is participating in 2 of those CSA packing mornings on Wednesdays to kind of learn the ropes and see how it's all done on our end, and also participate in at least 2 of those field walks on Tuesday mornings with myself and May, again, to just kind of learn the ropes and get an idea of how the harvest estimates are done, and that whole process for identifying crops a week in advance and when they might be ready for harvest for CSA. So I think those are probably the big 3 changes or transitions that are happening with the program this season, is really encouraging more opportunities for education and participation in the management side of things. So I just wanted to share that as a heads up, put that on your radar. And then the 5th one on here is listed as optional. We're trying to figure out more ways as staff to create opportunities to connect you all as farmers with other staff at the food group outside of the farm, and really gain more information about you know, what those folks do, what other programs besides the farm, besides Big River Farm exist at the food group, and other potential market opportunities that you could tap into. So an example of what this is looking like as we're figuring it out now from a staff perspective is the food shelf wholesale purchasing program that's being developed with our local sourcing coordinator, Danielle. And there'll be an info session about that in a couple of weeks in mid-February if you're interested in learning about that. But I just present that as another opportunity to connect with other staff outside the farm, and another program that we as farm staff don't manage directly, but is another opportunity and another market that you can tap into and sell to as a farmer at Big River Farm, making use of those other resources and other staff and other market opportunities within a larger nonprofit that we as the farm are a part of. So stay tuned for more opportunities to tap into some of those ideas and some of those markets too, as you're thinking about your business plan and what markets you want to sell to. I think the last thing on the sourcing list was turning in invoices. So this is important because it's how you get paid. And we'll have more information about this in an upcoming class too, talking about how to sell to Big River Farms market or other markets like that food sales program at the food group. But just wanted to highlight the importance of turning in invoices either with your harvest each week for CSA, or by the end of the week that you harvest the produce. And again, it's important because it helps us track things on our end as far as like inventory and just keeping track of how much money we're spending to buy produce, and then also helps with you getting paid quickly and timely, as opposed to, you know, waiting for a month or two to turn in invoices. So just wanted to throw that out there too, the importance of turning in those invoices on a weekly basis, or whenever you have a purchase order for a specific market that we're managing internally. And again, we'll talk more through like what that looks like and how to fill out an invoice and what a purchase order looks like at a future class. Okay, CSA program agreement. Like I said, this is brand new this season, and it's just another tool we're trying to use that lays out kind of how the program operates, what that looks like, and what the expectations and requirements are for participating. So if you had a chance to look at this, check it out. It was in the email and the calendar invite, but again, I can send you a copy after this class or after this meeting if you haven't gotten it yet. But it's kind of broken up into a few sections. So there's a training and education section that talks about some of those things I mentioned already. You can ignore that first one about the crop bidding meeting. That was for returning farmers in December. So this, you know, if you're at this meeting or if you're watching this recording later, that's totally fine for that first bullet point. Attending classes, which you're all doing, participating in the CSA packing mornings on Wednesdays, which I mentioned, participating in those field walks at least twice throughout the 18-week season. We'll have a schedule for both of those things too that you can sign up for, probably both digitally and in paper copy as a form as the season gets near in like May, June. And then, like I said, those potential opportunities to participate in other food group programs or markets, or making use of other resources within a larger nonprofit. There's some more information about sales and payments, just about the invoicing and purchase order process. Record keeping, I'm sure you've heard, is like really important as a farmer, just in general, to help you plan your business and track things and think about the future and scaling up, but also for some things like taxes, or tracking your income versus your expenses. Because we're certified organic, and if that's something you want to do in the future as an independent farmer once you've graduated from Big River Farms, that's another great reason to do record keeping, because there's a lot of documents and records that are needed to maintain that organic certification. But yeah, look through this, see if you have any questions. We'll talk through this whole document more in depth at a meeting coming up I think it's in February. I scheduled a meeting with you all and all of our returning farmers from the past couple seasons too, just to talk through this CSA agreement since it is brand new, and make sure that we're covering everything and answering any questions that you might have. So there's more info in here about just like how the program's managed, some of the shared infrastructure and resources that we have available for your use at the farm, and then just some other like fine print program terms, talking about how contracts are not guaranteed, but definitely prioritized as much as possible based on what's available. And that flexibility that I mentioned before, the ability to sell non-contracted produce to our CSA, if we have that flexibility. And then the last one on here is just stating that you all as first-year farmers will be eligible this year to receive smaller CSA contracts as that market opportunity right away. Again, to try and be more inclusive and involve everybody who wants to participate. The final thing I'm going to share here is the produce guide that I mentioned. So this is more generic, just talking about the kind of weekly process for harvesting and turning in produce for different markets. So what this looks like is, oh, go back here. I'll just focus on CSA right now, and we can talk about the food shelf program when we have that info section in a couple weeks. So for CSA, it looks like, you know, again, turning in those harvest estimate sheets, or just talking to us when we do our field walk each week, or talking with Jeff when he does those confirmation calls on Wednesday morning to let us know what you have and what's available. Looking for that purchase order, like I mentioned, by Thursday or Friday in your mailbox at the farm or in your email. Harvesting the following week on Monday or Tuesday for CSA orders. And then the whole process for weighing and tallying your produce, you know, writing, we'll have mailboxes out in the pack shed too with folders with different records in them for you. And one of the record logs in those folders is a harvest log. And that's partially for our organic certification. We need to keep track of anything that's harvested and sold for any market, whether it's for our CSA, for our food shelf purchasing program, or for any of your own independent markets that you're selling food to. So part of this process is just recording what you're harvesting in those harvest logs, doing the washing and the packing according to the purchase order, and writing that invoice. We'll talk more about labeling at that upcoming How to Sell to Big River Farms class, but wanted to point that out too. Everything you turn into the coolers for our CSA needs to be labeled. Same thing with the food shelf purchase orders. But we'll talk more in depth about that, like I said, at this upcoming. And then and wash any produce you harvest. And then there's another sorry, my connection dropped for a minute. So saying you'll have cooler pallet space in one of those two coolers for your own stuff, and then in the main cooler in the main pack shed, we'll have pallets lined up in the center of it, and that's kind of a shared harvest space for turning in produce for our CSA and for the food sales program specifically. So just a heads up, we can talk through more of that in person too when we're actually together in person at the farm, but wanted to let you know that there's that kind of shared pallet space for turning in CSA produce and food self produce. And again, we'll talk more through that at that upcoming how to sell to Big River Farms class in a few weeks. Let's see, what else is on that? Let me share my screen again here. Okay, yeah, so harvesting anything, making sure it's labeled, putting it in the cooler on the designated pallet. So for CSA, like I said, it's the center pallets in that main cooler space next to the pack shed. And then for CSA, there's a big whiteboard in the pack shed where the cooler is. And we use that as an inventory system to, again, kind of as an accountability measure and to make sure that what we've purchased from you is being harvested and turned in, so that we're not short or missing any produce items on Wednesday mornings when we're packing those boxes with all of our volunteers and with you. So if you turn in something for CSA, you'll label it, put it in the cooler, and then check your purchase order from us and write down what you turned in on the whiteboard. There'll be a space with your name, and it'll say like the week on it and the date. And you can note on that whiteboard when you're writing on it with the markers if you're missing anything, or if you're short a specific produce item. So say we order like 100 heads of lettuce from you for 1 week of CSA, and maybe you only have 60 because of pest damage. So you could write that you only have 60 on the board, and then just let us know either verbally, like if we're at the farm together, or phone, email, text, if you might be short of something, at least a day in advance. So by that Tuesday before Wednesday packing, so we can figure out if there's other produce we can order from you to kind of fill in the gaps to make sure we're not missing anything. Or we can work with other farmers too to order other types of produce. Again, just to make sure that we have the number of items in each box that we're looking for. So yeah, that's kind of the weekly process for thinking about produce, harvesting, turning it in, record keeping. Yeah, I'm gonna open it up to questions because then we've only got about 10 minutes left. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen too. Any questions about anything we just ran through, either the harvesting process or the sourcing process, or just how our CSA operates in general?
Just one question. So because you said the first year farmers can grow 1 or 2 crops. So when would that discussion happen so we know what seeds to get and plan for it?
Yes, excellent question. My hope was that I would have the contracts for returning farmers at least started by this point, but I've been behind schedule on getting those done, and I'm hoping to wrap them up by early next week. So I would say start thinking now about like what 1 to 2 crops you're interested in growing, and hopefully by the end of next week, I can provide you more information on like some of the gaps that might exist in that full 18-week kind of crop planning spreadsheet. And then we can have those discussions just one-on-one too after this meeting tonight. So I'll follow up with each of you, hopefully by the end of next week, or if not, early the following week at the beginning of February, to start having some of those conversations and really figure out like what those 1 to 2 crops might be. And then I'll create those contracts for you too, so that it's in writing and so you have some documentation.
And by when do we have to commit? Because just so that we know how much time we have to look and prepare for it.
I think ideally by the end of February, we'll want to have all the contracts wrapped up. So, within the next month or so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Does that sound doable on your end, Veda, as a timeline?
No, I have an exam on 22nd, 23rd of February. So that's why I'm trying to figure out. But if it's end of February, yes, I'll be ready by then.
Okay, I was going to say, if it's doable, we can always finalize things before the end of February too, especially if we're just focusing on 1 to 2 crops instead of a whole host of crops.
Sure.
But yeah, whatever makes most sense, we'll figure it out with everybody's timeline.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm hoping to finalize, I'm hoping to have those first drafts of contracts for returning farmers done by early next week, like I said, and then encouraging those farmers to send me back any edits or changes or updates they want to see by like mid-February, with the hope that then I can incorporate your contracts with first-year farmers with their contracts and have the whole thing finalized by the end of February. So that's kind of what my timeline's looking like, but you know, it's flexible.
That's helpful to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
This was a very good session. Thank you.
Yeah,
Very
thanks,
helpful
Veda.
planning. Yeah, thank
Yeah, again, let me know, anybody, if you have questions that come up that you think of after this meeting ends. Like I said before, you can always reach out to me by email or text or phone call during the week. And happy to chat, happy to work through things with you as you figure out what makes the most sense for your markets and as you're planning out crops for the season. Did you want to share any sort of like final questions or polls, Jeff, like we were doing at past classes?
No, I do not have any for this meeting, but
Okay, all good. Cool. Well, thanks for coming tonight, everybody.
Thank you.
thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah, have a good rest of your night. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye.